Hello, do you know that moment when you complete a build with 3 rings and the 4th ring takes you 30 minutes to figure out? Well, I have a few pointers for you. So these rings are meant to complement any build with more defense, survivability, utility, damage, or just more pure fun. Now this will be a short video because I don't want to give build examples. I'll just give you a few pointers for every ring and you will understand very fast how good they are. Now, I'll speak a little more about the Timekeeper ring because this is one of the most... It has a broken interaction and I'll show you in a minute. So, for example, bleeding does damage for 10 seconds. The firestorm creates burning on an enemy, right? This lasts 15 seconds and so on. But the Timekeeper ring works in a very mysterious way because it basically doubles the status effect on an enemy. Which means you get bleeding for 20 seconds. Of course, you deal more damage over time. And also, everything else that is, for example, shocked, corroded, and all of that, especially bleeding, will last a long time on the enemy. But I think the developers forgot one thing, and this is the stasis beam. So the stasis beam will last 20 seconds on an enemy. Basically, you can freeze an elite on Apocalypse for 20 seconds, and in 20 seconds, you can punch an elite to death, believe me. It's so broken. I think the developers should have removed this one from the jewel. Other than that, it can work on any damage over time, as you can see, elemental damage, so it does wonders, especially for the overloaded, because overloaded lasts 30 seconds, so this can apply overloaded. Our favorite gun in the game, Enigma, not my favorite to be honest. Works more or less kind of like the same way. Anyway, don't think too much about it, but for example, you can apply overloaded, corroded, bleeding, and fire damage with the same loadout. So that basically means the status effect on an enemy will be wild. I think you can even make a build out of all of this. Anyway, just explore all of the possibilities and keep it on your list. Now, the second ring is the Stone of Malevolence. Well, this is not very well explained in my opinion, but I think, let's put it like this. It basically helps you create a lot more damage by having a lot of status effect. So, you see we start from 0, right over here? It is not very well explained because you're going to get a lot more mod power. So, for example, you barely manage to load your power, your mod power, right? But then you just use one. And use another one. And soon enough you're just spamming these things. Because that's the way it works, you get a lot more mod power, but it's not apparent in the beginning. It also depends on your build, but as you can see, it can be very fun just to fire bullets and firestorms at your enemies. And of course you can also apply corroded and some other things. Basically you can play around with the game a lot and generate a lot more mod power, which will increase your damage on any build, especially the tanky builds. Number 3, Singe Ring. Well, this one is a bit of a hidden surprise. I mean, you don't have a lot of items that increase all damage dealt to burning enemies. All damage dealt means elemental, range damage, even damage from your minions or from your turret. So this is hugely overpowered in my opinion because it just takes up one ring slot and you can just apply burning with one of the mods on your weapons. I think it's very underrated because it's very rare to see something like this and it can complement any build. Number 4, the Sapphire Dreamstone. Well, to be honest, let's not get into the math of it. This ring basically allows you to use skills 50% faster if you're fighting something or shooting a boss or something. And it also refills the turret ammo faster. Unless you get killed. You can see the procs, but they're very tiny. Depends on what skill you're using, but mostly... Okay, let's wait for this to be over and then you'll see how much it helps you. It depends on your build, but it can help any build because any build uses skills and it's super useful there as well. Okay, so the skills are on cooldown, right? Did you see that? You can see it jumping a little bit, so because the skills also reload over time as well, or the cooldown decreases, is going to be basically very fast. It's faster than you imagine, so definitely one of the things that nobody really explains or nobody really uses in their builds. Super cool to use as well. Now at number 5 we have the rerouting cable, which is one of my favorite rings, but it's kind of hard to use, but at the same time it's good on any build. So you know that boss fight where you just going to dodge roll a lot? Well, imagine if you dodge roll 1, 2, 3, 4 times, you're going to get that mod power back. Now sadly I cannot show you over here because this is of course not going to join your stamina. But believe me, you can have up to, let's say, 25% shield accumulated if you dodge roll 3 or 4 times and use up all of your stamina, especially because most people are using very heavy armor, a lot of weight. So this can basically mean you dodge roll out of the enemy or the boss, and then if you take damage, there's basically no damage taken. It's also a very cheap way of gaining a shield for some rings, or some very strong amulets like this one. Or even... Anyway, let's not get into the builds because, like I said, no builds. Can be really cool to offer you some extra defenses and activate the shield for purpose of using other stuff. So that was number 4. Number 5 will be the rerouting ring. Oh, I already spoke about that one. So, rerouting cable, outcast ring. Now, this is a bit of a tricky one to explain because it doesn't work as people think it works. So keep in mind that you have a main weapon and then you also have a secondary weapon, so you can just reload with the secondary weapon, shoot once. The secondary weapon always be faster probably. You also use one-shot weapons. So what you're going to do is basically reload your secondary weapon 5 times and then use your main weapon. Reload it. And if you find you cannot deal damage, just shoot your secondary weapon, reload it, and then switch to your main one, and it will reset the cooldown. It's basically going to give you a permanent 25% increase in your reload speed. And usually the rings only give you 10%, 15% reload speed. So this ring is as good as 2 rings when it comes to reloading speed, especially for certain builds or just for playing the game normal. I find that you need a lot of reload speed in this game, so definitely one of the rings that was overlooked by many people as well. Now at number 7 we'll have the low yield recovery ring. Well, this is a tricky one to explain, but this is exceptionally good for farming. Some of the rings over here, for example, this ring can perfectly replace all of your relic use for healing. Because you not only have the regeneration per minute from the ring, you also have, well, I guess it depends on if you take it or not, you also have the lifesteal. So combining lifesteal with regeneration, and maybe even the heart that has regeneration per minute. Anyway, it depends on a lot of things, but basically killing enemies will restore your health and you can have a stack of it. So that means you can restore 30 seconds of health, which means 30% of your max health, which means you'll be restoring 1/3 of your health every time you're killing enemies and fighting. Which is really underrated because it will allow you to clear dungeons faster and just play so reckless. You can take damage even on Apocalypse with the right build and just be able to recover that normally. Well, it doesn't work so good against boss fights, but you get the idea. Now, number 8, it will be the Face Shaman ring. I think this is underrated because many people think, oh, it's 0.25 health regeneration. But you're going to mostly be using it for relic speed. Again, this is not really exact because I'm using other stuff that increases it as well. Relic use speed. Also, you have it over here. Relic use speed. So this can help you. One relic use can mean the difference between life or death, or just losing a boss fight and having to restart it. And also the passive regeneration helps a lot more because again, you don't just have the passive regeneration, you also probably will have the siphoner, you also probably have a lot of other ways to regenerate, like the roots. And definitely it's going to use you, it's going to be used in a way that is also defensive and offensive, depending on what type of build you have. So it's definitely one of the more underrated rings, even though it's kind of a simple one. And then we have the Encrypted ring. Now this is a bit of a cheese thing, because you can have some mods, especially with the stasis beam. I use this a lot actually. The stasis beam, and I think the other one, which was the prismatic driver, but yeah, the stasis beam is super useful as opposed to the other ones. So you might think, well, it cannot work like that, can it? Oh yes, it does work like that. So fire the stasis beam 3 times and then you get a lot of regeneration again. It's 10% over 30 seconds, so that's another third of your health coming back to you. And again, you can just use it on a secondary weapon, you don't have to use it on time stasis, but it can help you clear dungeons so fast and it can be so good in the long run. And then number 10 we have the burden of the warlock. Now this is a... well, I guess it depends on how you view things, it can be very good or very bad. Let me see, oh it's over here. No? Hey, where's my burden of the warlock? Over here. This is kind of a mixed bag, but I don't think people realize that once again with the siphoner and other abilities... okay, for the last one, let's combine it. So for example, if you combine these two, you will have a very nice surprise that you can basically make a build that destroys most of the enemy. On hard difficulties like Apocalypse, it might not be as viable, but you can definitely make a build even on Apocalypse for damage over time. So when it starts going, it will really go. Especially for damage over time like this. Keep in mind that boosting wounds will also help you a bit with this. It's not elemental damage, but it also can... oh no, that's not where I shot it. Basically, if you do damage over time, it will regenerate all of the lost health from the mod usage. So you can just use mods so much faster. Oh yeah, now this is going. So as you can see, it's complete chaos over here. You can basically use them off cooldown much faster. So by just combining something like this, you're going to be crazy with health regeneration and damage over time, and this is not even a build designed for damage. Okay, don't get crazy. So yeah, definitely a lot of fun to use some of these rings, especially combining some of them. Anyway, see you next time, have fun!